wasn't the only one talking about this. There were other people on the radio who were going into the same subject. He was only one of them. Chuck Schrammick was an amateur astronomer who was the guy taking photographs of this alleged companion object. But in the aftermath of all this, my own contact started. I met Dr. Brown, I met Dr. Mandelker. I respected both these guys hugely, and on November 10th, 1996, I started to write down this dream voice, as I called it. And the results were amazing. It was still to this day the most pivotal turning point in my entire life. I can't tell you how incredible it was to start hearing this voice speaking that obviously was intelligent and thinking and knowledgeable, and yet at the same time knowing that it wasn't really me in my conscious egoic sense. There was no awareness in my conscious mind of what I was saying when I did this, and yet the information that came through was very clear. The sentences would oscillate sometimes between things that were complete gobbledygook to things that actually did make a lot of sense. For me, it also used a lot of dream symbolism and metaphor. The early data does not come across as perfectly written sentences. I think anybody who starts out that way is probably letting their conscious mind influence the words too much. When you're first getting started, you're getting tuned, and you're not necessarily going to always have the right kind of stuff coming in. You should basically be capturing everything that you hear in your mind, regardless of whether you think it means anything or not. So you'll have sentences that are completely pointless and just sort of representative of the kind of junk that's blowing around inside your mind. Then as you get more focused, things will get clearer and it'll become stronger. Now, again, this is a very advanced path to actually do these kinds of readings, and I'm really not recommending most people do this. There is a very, very high danger that you are going to get information that is negatively inspired, because if you don't really live by the principles that you're teaching, then it mandates that a negative entity will be able to get some words in edgewise. And those are the parts of the readings that will end up talking about mass doom coming around the corner, FEMA camps, the so-called New World Order Illuminati taking over the planet, all this kind of negative stuff. Very, very few people who have ever tried to do channeling don't get this type of overlay in their messages. It's extremely difficult not to, because the level of purity that you have to aspire to is something most of us cannot attain. It does require a life that is very, very much in harmony with the principles that you teach. But I also want to point out that there's a lot of other ways that you can get accurate information from your higher self. The tarot cards are something that is not just the gift that a few readers would have. It's something anybody can learn. You can get a tarot deck and learn the basic meanings of the cards and pull the cards out and just hold them in your hand and stare at them with the card in your hand. That's a very important part. You got to hold on to it while you're reading the book, and the book is telling you what that card means, and you want to use your heart and use your intent to kind of set that energy into the card. And what will happen is that this part of yourself that is of the higher mind, when you ask a question and you want guidance on any particular issue in your life, you can get these tarot books and learn how to do a basic tarot card reading for yourself and pull the cards out. Usually you do a 10-card spread. That's the basic model that I would recommend using when you're getting started. And each position in the 10-card spread has something to do with an answer to the question. And you put the cards down, and that will give you the answer. So by doing this, you can get in touch with your higher self, get a spiritually meaningful message, and the more that you tune in and really, really get centered when you draw the cards and let things happen spontaneously, you'll get some amazing results. I don't think there was anything special about me for why I was able to do this. I started doing it late in junior high school and continued through high school. And it wasn't until the readings really got started and I developed that skill that I graduated past the point of doing cards. In fact, my readings told me that the cards were too crude now that I'd gotten to this point where I could do this. So again, cards are a wonderful way to get started. I do highly recommend that. My personal favorite is the Rider-Waite Tarot deck. I think other tarot decks haven't been used as much, so they don't have the same degree of archetypal energy charge on the images. The Rider-Waite deck to me really is the best. Again, 10-card spread. You can find lots of tarot books that will show you how to do this. You can get your own Rider deck and charge the cards up with meaning, hold on to the cards, look at the card, think about what it means, and really resonate with that. And that will help you dramatically, because then you just basically follow the instructions. You go through your book, and you may not remember what the cards mean, but you look up each position, you look up what that position means in terms of the answer to your question. And then you go look up what the card means. And in that way, you can write everything down, get a reading for yourself, get some kind of guidance. So that's one really good way to be able to obtain information. Of course, another one is writing your dreams down. And as we go on, I'm going to be giving you more and more information about how to analyze your dreams, how to use your dreams to help yourself with guidance, to help yourself with a stronger type of information and get the word out. Dreams will also help you tune to be able to get more in touch with your intuition, because when you wake up in the morning, it's very easy to lose the dream entirely. It takes a lot more work to remember what was happening to you right before you woke up. And as I've said before, you want to not move when you wake up. You want to stay perfectly still in bed. Don't get up to an alarm if at all possible. Set your alarm to wake you up at the last minute, but let yourself wake up naturally with your own body clock. And if you find you can't do that, then you're probably not giving yourself enough sleep, because when you do have enough sleep, you will naturally wake up, and it won't be as much of an issue. Of course, the central focus has always been meditation. It's not an easy thing to do. People don't really like necessarily sitting there and doing nothing. But I also advise not to just look at meditation as something you only do once in a while, but to look at it as a life path, to try to keep your mind as clear as possible, as free from stress and strain and any type of unloving or judgmental thoughts, and just try to tune yourself to the highest possible level. But it's also very good to sit and be quiet and be still. I think that, for example, being a student and having to read books is a very strong meditation. To actually sit and hold your attention span on one thing and read this book in linear fashion. This is one of the things I wanted to say about how I got through my finals in college, for those of you who are about to go through this again. The classic thing that will happen is while you're reading a book, your mind will wander somewhere else, especially if you're reading something that's dry and boring. And so what you can do is catch yourself at the end of paragraphs or even maybe at the end of a page, and before you ever turn the page, or before you ever even jump to the next page, if you have 2 pages open, stop yourself and say, do I understand what I was reading, or was my mind somewhere else? And it's a wonderful meditation. And then I recommend that you keep going back and rereading, and reread it until your mind stops wandering. That's really the key, because I had some classes in college where he would ask you to read these short stories, and you had to retain specific details from the story that were something that you either got or you didn't get. And what he intended to do by that is catch you if your mind was wandering. Because if your mind wanders and you read a story, you'll get the essence of the story. You'll understand the basic outline of the plot. But you won't retain specific details from the story. That only happens if you train yourself to not zone out and to actually go back and reread the same paragraph until you know you got it. And I've used that process to get through school, and of course in the Law of One material it was the same thing. The scope of what I was reading was so vast that my mind would immediately start wandering all these different things. And I would have to keep going back and rereading and going back and rereading. And as I've said before, it would sometimes take me 40 minutes on one page before I would turn the page. So that's a really great meditative exercise, just being a student, having a book to read. Of course, sometimes if a book is well written, you get really drawn into it and you kind of zoom along. And it's okay, if it's a novel or something, to do that. It's okay to just kind of blast your way through something. But you'll never retain it to the degree that you will if you really go slowly and take your time. So this is a lot of stuff about my history, but that's really where my mind has been. I've had a lot of reflection going on, a lot of looking back at my own past, because this is a really important moment in world history. And when these kind of singularly important moments happen, it's very easy to start looking at the grand view of things and step back from whatever is immediately in front of you and start to think in terms of the big picture. So for me, I really had no idea where all of this was going. As I've said so many times before, the readings were very personal, they were very private, it was only something for me.